But we are starting unit 2 today, which means like, we just wrapped up unit 1. So speaking of unit 1, I still have some kids that just barely got to retake it today. So these scores might not be like 100% accurate, but these are our class averages for the multiple choice portion. All right, and the fact that we have for a non-honors class averages this high is great. I'm not gonna lie to you. Usually in like a non-honors class, the first time that we take it, I don't know, you can expect the averages to be like in the 50s, maybe even less, who knows? But after the retake, you guys are in like about the 70s for the most part. And since you guys, the first unit was statistics, hopefully you guys know what this means. What does it mean to have standard deviations for you guys around like 22? So standard deviation tells us how spread out the data is. So were you guys the most spread out or the least spread out as far as scores? So if you know that you scored like 100% or close to 100% and you're like, what the heck, our class average is 69%, that's because you guys had a big standard deviation. So I also have like quite a few that are like under that, but the standard deviation is saying like on average, people vary by about like 22 points from person to person. Okay, so there you go. I have not finished grading the constructed response portion after the retake. I didn't really look at what the averages were for before that. That'll just take longer to grade. The first time I like went through it really fast so that you could be able to correct it. But this time I'm taking my time. I have lots to do, so I'm just getting to it when I can. But the standard is within 7 days for everything. And since you guys took the retake Friday, then you can expect your score to be updated by Friday, maybe sooner. You'll know that it's your new score when it says retake given during class time, higher of 2 scores given. So if you notice like your score didn't change, well, that's because you did better the first time. But most people improve after the second time. Now, if the score is still something that you do not like, then there is stuff that can be done. Like I know I said like you only get 1 retake, but I know some people have like unique situations. For some people, that's like the only reason that they're failing. And I wouldn't want that to be the case. But if you needed to improve that test score even after the retake, you would need to do it by doing corrections in office hours. There's really no other way around it. And it would have to be corrections on the one that you most recently took, not the one that we corrected in groups. Whichever one you most recently took, you would correct it and get like 50% of that score back. And then if for some reason that's not enough, then you can plead your case. You could show that you did more tutoring, that you actually did the study guides and understand them. But like the procedure is normally just the 1 retake and that's it, we move on. So keep that in mind. That'll be the same process for pretty much all the unit tests. So make sure that you are doing the study guides, taking the retake seriously. Miss Medina. Okay. So I think the fact that I gave you study guides that look really similar to the actual test, just with different numbers and like maybe different pictures, that kind of you should expect throughout the rest of the year. So it's really like on you for not asking prior to the test. But still, there's ways to like remediate your grades, so make sure that you're taking advantage of that. One more thing too, this will probably be like one of the last times I remind you of this. And it's to make sure that your binder check is turned in. So some of you said like, oh, I'll show it to you tomorrow, and you still have not done that. Or I don't know, it's just a low score, you only had some of your notes. If you have a bad score in that or a 0, Like you cannot get higher than a C in the class. You cannot. And that would be with you like acing everything else. The only things that are going in that collaborative assignment category or project category are these binder checks. So these notes you usually do with your groups collaboratively as a class. So that's like the only thing that's going to go in there. And it should cushion your grade and also prevent you from failing from like one bad test. All right, so questions on that? Okay, so that'll probably be one of the last times I remind you about that. As long as I'm not in the middle of teaching, you can ask me to check your binder and I will. But we are doing lesson 1 of unit 2 today. And it's all about translating expressions, using them to represent things. So this part is not on your paper, but if you want to write it down on the back of this paper, where there's like a bunch of blanks on the other side, then feel free. I will do the same thing as before, which is like alternate between people. Here's what you'll be doing though, and you can use your groups to answer these. Here's some letters and what they represent. All costs are in dollars. So M represents the cost of the main dish, N represents the number of side dishes, S represents the cost of a side dish, and T represents the total cost of the meal. So based off of that information, you will discuss in your groups what each equation means in this situation. What makes an equation an equation? Equal signs, good. So before we were just looking at expressions on this paper. This one, these are all expressions because none of them have equal signs. These ones do have equal signs, the ones on this first example. So just keep that in mind. You are going to explain what each equation means given this bit of information, and then I'll call on you individually, but I won't tell you the order, so just make sure you've discussed all of them. Any questions on that? Since there's 4, I'll give you 4 minutes. Starting now.
So you are telling me what the M equals 7.50 is referring to.
All right, class, would we disagree with that at all, or is it good? Okay, so cost of main dish is $7.50. Pretty straightforward. Equal sign means that both sides are the same. If M represents the cost of the main dish and the other side is just the 7.50, then it must be $7.50. And that's really all we're doing is interpreting these. So then, Anaya, what about the second one where it says M equals S plus 4.50? So we're adding the main and the side dish together. Okay, some people are saying no. Why is that no? I mean, we're talking about the main dish and the side dish, but what are we saying about them? We're adding to what? Well, total price is T. So what did we say that the main dish equals? $7.50. So keep that in mind. Now we're saying that the M also equals S plus 450. So what does the S stand for? So what are we saying about the side dish? The side dish costs $4.50. The side dish costs $3. How do you know that? You're right. adding 3 to 450 makes it 750, right? So you could have that as your sentence, or you could just say things like, I don't know, difference in price from main dish to side dish is 450. Or something that uses that. All right, they're not being added together because it's not like M plus S or anything like that. The side dish doesn't equal 450 because it would have said S equals 450. But what it does say is that if I add 450 to it, then now it's the same as the main dish. Does that make sense? Okay. So then let's see. Dash, what about the NS equals 6? Okay, so if N represents the number of side dishes, it's not like saying N equals 6, right? So why is it being multiplied by the side dishes? Yes. So N is the number of side dishes. S is the cost of one side dish. So if we multiply them together, we get $6 overall. So what did we say the side dish costs? Then what must be the number of sides ordered in that one? So to really summarize that, you could say 2 side dishes ordered. But if you're really just explaining what it is, it's the number of side dishes times the cost of that. Okay, which happens to equal 6. So that's just the cost of the sides. But of course, it just depends on how many sides you order. Now, what is D telling us, Josie? Okay, so gives total cost. Can we fix like what should go in the middle? So we have the main dish plus what gives the total cost. So the main dish plus side, and of course that depends on number of sides times the cost, which is 3 really, but number of sides times cost would give you the total cost. Because of course it could vary how many sides you decide to order according to this. Questions on that? All right. I don't think anyone, I mean, I also didn't really say that you had to write a new equation that could be true in this situation, but equations just have to have what? Equal signs. So you could have said N equals 2, right? Because that was the number of side dishes we ordered over here. You could say S equals 3, because that's what we determined each side dish cost. And there's like lots of other things to fix that. So if I have like, I don't know, 4 side dishes that I ordered, that could be equal to $12. That would be true since we determined the sides were $3 each. Things like that, if you had to make that yourself. All right, now on to what is on the paper. So this one, we're basically going to plan a pizza party. So in your groups, you will talk about things like factors that you have to consider when you plan a pizza party, and you'll write it down as we go. Now, whether that contains numbers, letters, is up to you. We're gonna start with just recording your plan and cost estimate. So like, how much pizza will you need? How much the pizza cost? What kind of pizza would you buy? And then write down some expressions to represent that, kind of like we did with the equation. So start with that. Justina, how many guests? So if we're planning a pizza party for this class, about how many people? Okay, so since we know how many people are in this class and I didn't actually count, you could represent that with a number. Could that number vary sometimes though? And why would it vary? I don't know why. People leave, sometimes they go home, why else? Sometimes we do get new students. So we could also write it as a variable. So whether you wrote it as a 16 or whether you wrote it as a variable, what variable letter would you pick? Okay, it really doesn't matter. But whatever you pick for something, you can't use it for something else in that same situation. You have to use a different letter. So me, when I pick number of people, I usually pick N for number, but it's up to you, I don't care. So 16 or X. And why does it matter the number of people? So you know how many pizzas to get. So we could represent number of pizzas with what? Okay, so some people already determined we should get 5 pizzas. What if, okay, so if it varies, then what do you think we should use for the variable? Okay, E for pizza. So, if I chose 5 pizzas for the class, how can I figure out how many slices everyone gets? So how many slices are in like a normal pizza? 18. Okay, so it could vary as well. So slices could be S, or like you guys said, usually it is anywhere from like 6 to 8. Let's say it's 8. If we get 5 pizzas, how can I figure out how many slices that is? So the question was, if there are 8 slices in a pizza and I decide to get 5 pizzas, how can I figure out how many slices that is? 8 times 5. Okay, good. And then how many slices is that? 40. So that could be something else you wrote. I don't know, in your planning, 8 times 5 is 40, so that we have 40 slices. If I have 40 slices, then how many does each person get? Like, what math would I have to do for that? 40 divided by 16. Let's see. Like, it would not be the other way around. Order does matter in division. So if I have 40 slices to divide between 16 people, what is that approximately? You know it's going to be a decimal. It's going to be 2.5. Now, can we have 0.5 of a slice? You could cut it. So like in another class, someone said, oh, we need a pizza cutter. So we have to buy a pizza cutter, I guess. How much would a pizza cutter be about? Okay, and that could vary too, but I think earlier and even right now, people said $5. So if I'm trying to like total up how much I need to spend, it would be whatever I need to spend on these pizzas, which, do I know how much these pizzas cost? About 10 bucks more. So the cost of pizza could vary depending on where you go, right? Is that safe to say? So let's make it speed. Based on the variables I'm already using and stuff, what would I have to times the cost by? So now I'm gonna make something that talks about like my total that I need to pay. So what contributes to the total? E, which is my number of pizzas. Anything else? The pizza cutter, which we determined is $5, that would add to the cost, so I'm gonna put +5. But like, if I said I'm getting 5 pizzas, does that mean it's only gonna cost me $10? So what do I need to do to the piece? Five. Wait, why the 5? Okay, so you're already determining we're getting 5 pizzas. But it's not costing me $10 in total, right? So what do I need to do to the 5? Okay, what variable out of these ones that we already said? C. If you're already deciding that it's 5 pizzas that we're getting, the cost, like my total cost will be whatever pizza costs times 5. Does that make sense? Yes, maybe. Okay, so, and this could vary from class to class, like different classes at different things that have way more people in my other classes. So if you're writing this down, then I would just make sure that you take note that this is for the pizza cutter. This is for my 5 pizzas that we already determined for getting. And then this would be my cost for the pizza. All right, now later on in the paper, it says something like, in your expressions, are there quantities that might change on the day of the party? We kind of already talked about that. Like what quantities might change on the day of the party? The number of people. So say like, I don't know, 6 people are absent. And now we have just 10 people to split 40 slices of pizza between. How many slices would each person then get? 4. So taking note of the things that could change could help you determine what should be variables and what should not be. And that's why I'm saying, like, rewrite those quantities with letters. I feel like we've already kind of done that as we went, so we'll keep going. Now let's talk about constraints. So constraints is one of the learning targets on this lesson, is knowing what those are. And you have a spot on the back of your paper to fill it in. So there's like a blank. That blank you need to fill in is constraint. So a constraint is something that limits what is possible or reasonable in a situation. So we need to fill that in on the back, constraint, where it says a blank. That is going to be the word constraint. So a constraint is something that limits what is possible or reasonable in a situation. In those situations, we might rather want to use inequality symbols. So like greater than, less than, or equal to, things like that. And we can do that for some of the things we already said. Now here's an example. One constraint in a pizza party might be the number of slices of pizza each person could have. And we could designate slices with S. One way to write the number of slices each person could have is S less than 4. So like we said, if 4 people, or not 4 people, if 6 people are absent, then each person gets to have 4 slices, or up to 4 slices. So does everyone have to have 4 slices? No. So they have exactly 4 slices. So then I would even add that little line underneath to show that it could be for exactly. Could I have a negative number of slices? So then it could be, this would be another way to represent it. It'd be reasonable to say that the number of slices you have are between like 0 and 4. We could have fractions of the slice, like we could cut it and make fractions of slices. So anywhere from 0 to 4 slices would be reasonable. And that's really like the point of this lesson. So then what's a reasonable amount of pizzas that we could have? Are we saying that our maximum is going to be 5? Okay, so then if that's my maximum, then I'll put it on this side. That's the most I could have is 5. Could I have less than that? What do you think is like the least amount that we could have and still have a pizza button? And that's really up to you. As long as it's not a negative number, because we have negative pizza. We actually can't buy like half a pizza, right? So in that one, we would say where P is whole numbers. And then I think you guys are getting the picture. So like for your practice, for example, there'll be variables. They may explain what each variable is, whether it's like number of students or like total cost or something else. I don't know. It'll explain to you what the variables represent. And then if there's numbers attached to them, you just kind of have to use your critical thinking skills to determine what it is. So this first lesson is all about interpreting expressions. So questions on that? Okay, we're really like just barely like moving ourselves into this. So you should be able to do the practice. It's the unit 2 lesson 1 that's in Schoology. Do your best, shoot for an 80% or higher. If you end up needing more than 2 attempts, you can email me and let me know. But you get 2 attempts automatically. They're the same exact questions. Might be a different order, but you still can check. Any other questions so far? Yeah.